Hi guys, here from Pax Europiana, from this beautiful town of Linz, the capital of Upper Austria, the region where I was born. It's now very dynamic. This will be also a new city development area. This is a bit crunchy here, but the future of Linz is quite impressive and it's going very good, because here you see the skyscrapers and it's going, I'm very positive about that one. The situation is positive, but what is happening, of course, in Linz is that there is a lot of lack of labor and there is a lot of workers missing in the tourism, in the manufacturing, in the industry, and we have also many problems in Upper Austria which we can solve with more Europe. That's why we created an initiative, an association called Upper Austria Goes Europe. And we will be active here to solve the issues of integration between the newly arrived Upper Austrians and between the issues of certain populism which in the last years has come in this region, unfortunately, and also increase prosperity by more opening Upper Austria to Europe. That's the plan. It has already developed. This is actually a very dynamic center. The prices are also very high, and a lot of Austrians and a lot of people from the region I'm working very much, the Balkans, Ukraine, have come here in the last years, and that's very good. The new Upper Austrians, they have rebuilt this beautiful place, and it was always a refugee welcoming area since 1945, because let's never forget, Upper Austria was liberated by General Patton, the Third Army. They have liberated Mauthausen, the terrible concentration camp, and they have liberated Upper Austria, and they kept it free. Not all of it. They have given the north, the so-called granite land, to the Soviets, very much to my regret, but that was the appeasement policy of the past. And so this main part of Upper Austria was kept free, and a lot of people moved here from Eastern Europe, fleeing from the Red Army. They were coming from all German-speaking minorities of Romania, of Ukraine, of Poland, of Czechoslovakia, obviously, and many other parts of the former Yugoslavia and many other regions. They came here and they found a new home, and they are now part of this beautiful Upper Austria. And in this tradition of American-backed freedom, that's first of all, I will call today and again for NATO membership for Upper Austria and all of Austria, obviously. I will talk about federalism, and I will talk also, that's very much important, to have strong regions with some regional political representation bodies, with economic development authorities like they have it here. That's really very important. And also regions that have some level of autonomy in their political direction. I'm against separatism, don't get me wrong. I will never argue for that, but only in the case, obviously, of genocidal violence, the case of Milosevic, then you lose the right to govern when you want to extinguish a part of your population. And that has happened in the case of Kosovo, and it didn't happen in the case of the Donbass and of Crimea. That's a Russian lie. And it leads me immediately to this one big topic which I will discuss here, the Russian influence in Upper Austria. You see this building here, it's the symbol of Russian influence in Upper Austria. This is the Tower of Power of the Russian influence of the energy sector, and I call for the end of this influence in Upper Austria and to cut all the Russian gas imports, to cut all Russian imports, because it's a criminal enterprise, the Russian state, as they have shown very well in this year. And please, Upper Austria, cut all ties, industrial, trade, mineral, energy, and whatever ties there might be to the criminal Russian state. That must end. Yes. And then what I propose for European Upper Austria, to reconnect to the new Europe. It's quite logical because many of the people from the regions I will talk now about, they have links already to Upper Austria because their grandfathers, they have moved here because they fled from the Red Army, and I will propose 9 different regions. I think it's very logical. I think I made a reasonable choice of regions. It's a mix, some industrial, some touristic, like Upper Austria as well. Always interesting regions in their country with some very important aspects which I want to outline, and I want to work then on these partnerships. There's maybe different options. I identified now 9 regions which I will advocate for. Some of them are very well known. Some of them have to be made very well known. In some I have very good connections already. In some I have to develop them. But I identified now 9. I put it on our new Twitter handle. Please, Tower of Power, no Russia again. Don't buy any Russian gas anymore. Much better to cut it off now in July than in the next winter. Now we can adopt 5 months to go for the winter and we will be free of Putin's gas, and that's much better. A shock, hard, cold turkey for Europe. Without Russian gas, we will have other gas, we will have other energy, we will definitely survive. We will even thrive without Russian energy because it will no longer corrupt our political elites, because that's what's happening. Putin is paying Orban and everybody else as well who is in charge of the big energy imports, and that's organized criminality for me, and that's political treason for me, and that has to stop. Here comes Arbeiterkammer. That's the Austrian Chamber of Commerce. They are honking not at me but at the traffic. Situation is here. Please open the Austrian labor market to all the pro-European Balkans and Ukraine. To the Ukrainians who are refugees here, we've opened it under EU directive for exactly 1 year only. Can anybody explain me why only 1 year? I have no explanation, but xenophobic, protectionist idiocy. That is wrong. What we need to do is to open the labor market permanently for the Ukrainians as long as the war comes, and then to have 5 years of labor market opening for Ukraine and for all the pro-European Western Balkan people. Yes! And that's for all Austria, because that's the Austrian question. I understand that very well. By the way, I know all these things very well. And here, Upper Austria, this is now for the left. After the Conservatives, they are working with Russia really bad. The left is protectionist on the labor market, and this has to end. We need to open the labor market not for Serbia because they are with Russia, but for all other pro-European Balkans. We have exactly 5. It's logical. Moldova, Georgia as well. So we have 5 of these regions. They are very good regions, and they are countries like Bosnia, Kosovo, and the 3 NATO allies. By the way, Bosnia, Kosovo in NATO, and Austria as well. That will be peace for the Balkans. So the 3 others, and they're already in NATO, they must be fast in the EU. And so these 5 countries, plus Ukraine and Moldova, Georgia, to have a temporary labor market access, not permanently like EU members, citizens, no, but give them 1 year, but give them easy. Residence and work here 1 year. If you can make it here, fine. If you don't like it here, probably it's better to look for other opportunities, because why to stay? But many of them, they have already relatives here, the Kosovo, the Bosnians, the Ukrainians now, but most of the Western Balkans do have. It will be easy to integrate. And by the way, dear friends from the Labor Chamber, we need workers in tourism, manufacturing, in the industry, specialized skilled workers, kitchen, everything is needed at the moment, because we are contrary to that crazy panic in a big economic boom. And especially when energy gets more expensive, when we want to raise interest rates to reduce inflation, opening of the labor market is the most logical point in economics. Hello! And it's not taking anybody's jobs, it's just producing more jobs, because it generates more wealth, it creates higher productivity, it creates the services and products in Austria which we need, and it fights inflation, so we don't have to increase interest rates so fast. Opening the labor market is the very logical conclusion. And by the way, if anybody still is interested in economics, Of course, more free trade agreements is also fighting inflation. I think it's who doesn't understand that should not work in public institutions at all, not even in the Chamber of Workers, because probably even there they had to study some kind of economics at least, yeah. Whereas I doubt that, but nevertheless, yeah. You cannot save the Austrian left. They are hopelessly lost in their xenophobic, anti-Semitic, protectionist, anti-American and anti-capitalist and anti-NATO kind of box in which they have put themselves into, and I try to help them, but I think it's very difficult for them. It must be very confused life in the left circles. They hate everybody, which basically we are. They hate themselves then logically, because we are part of EU and the West. They want to withdraw from the world in some kind of left-wing frenzy. That's very sad. Anyhow, let's not get too much into these issues, but let's talk about Upper Austria and what we can do as Upper Austrian Association for Upper Austria Goes Europe in order to build these partnerships. I've identified these 9 regions. I'm just thinking to make the list completely. Most important is European Kherson. This is very important region because European Kherson must be liberated. We can never, under no possible compromise circumstances and peacement, whatever, leave Kherson with Russia. Part of it is free anyhow, but we have to push Russia back over the Dnipro and at least the Kherson Oblast. Absolutely, the whole of the Kherson Oblast. Yeah? This is the northern part of Crimea. This is the twin. This must be liberated fully. If we cannot get more than this in the July offensive of Ukraine, supported by the West, and shame the Austrian treasonable people for doing so little, but that's another topic. Yeah? But Kherson must be liberated and it must be rebuilt, and there it must be time for a partnership between Upper Austria and Kherson. That's the most important. Okay, number 2 is the region Imereti. That very few will know. That's in central Georgia, next to the Black Sea coast. But it's a wonderful place. I was there now. It's called Kata-Uzi, the capital. It has this Swiss Air airport, which some of you might know when you fly to Georgia, and it's a typical central, like Upper Austria. It's very logical in Upper Austria, and it's a very good cooperation region. Actually, I wanted to say about Kherson, strategically it's very important because it controls the entry into Ukraine, the Dnipro. All the goods and services have to flow out of the Dnipro. All the industrial assets the Soviet Union built along the Dnipro. So please, yeah, the Dnipro is very important. That's why Kherson is very important. Free European Kherson, the partner. And of course Imereti, very logical industrial region. The Kutaisi, actually I mix it up all the time, is a wonderful place with a very good city like Linz. Yeah? I always choose mid-sized, like secondary industrial towns, like my hometown where I was born. It's a very logical partner for Austria, and also that's Kata-Uzi, that's Imereti, that's in Georgia. So there are 2, Kherson and Imereti. Then the third one is Kahul. Kahul is a very important strategic region, similar like Kherson, and it's very, very good region. It's in the southern edge of Moldova at the Danube. And by the way, Linz at the Danube. Kahul is not directly at the Danube, but this Giurgiuleste, the Danube harbor, the exit to the Black Sea and the Danube for Moldova is there, and that's really very important. So the logic is to support this beautiful place with the partnership with Upper Austria, and that's also economically, politically, industrial, strategically very important region. So that's the 3 in Eastern Europe. I repeat, Kherson, Imereti and also Kahul. Then I have very good contacts now to Kata-Uzi, I think, yeah, with our friends from Georgia. Kherson, that's a big issue. Kabul. I lack some context, but I will find them. That's on my mission to-do list. Yeah. So we come to the Western Balkans. It's very important, obviously, for me. In Serbia, the country where I'm not in favor of EU membership, but I want to create an association for European Serbia to help them to change to the West. After the turn of the West, we will see. But I believe in federal Serbia. I want to build a partnership, not with the easy ones, with Vojvodina, that's easy, or with Uzice, which might logically be a partner town for Linz. But I want to do it with Sanjak, the southern region, which is squeezed between Montenegro and Kosovo and Bosnia, and it's with our Bosniaks Muslim friends, and it's a very, very nice region. I was there to visit it, the European Sanjak. That's some area which is highly discriminated by Mr. Vučić and the Serb nationalists in power, and we should help them. There's also ample links historically between the Sanjak, which until 1912 was Austrian territory militarily, not fully integrated like Bosnia after 1908, but it was very important for us back then, and it should be at least worth a partnership, and it's something like a stepping stone towards federal Serbia. So I'm calling for the Sanjak to be the partner of Upper Austria, and there I have already good contact. After complicated Serbia is covered, let's come to Bosnia, because Bosnia has this logical partner region for Upper Austria. That's the Tuzla region. As you know very well, I'm for 9 regions for Bosnia, like Austria. One of them should be Tuzla region. It could be also the other region, but I think that's the more logical. And I fell in love with Tuzla, and it's a beautiful place. Alma Sadic is from there, and she had to leave under terrible circumstances. Many people from Tuzla are in Upper Austria. I think it is a very important region, and it's also from the geography and from the industrial assets a very logical point that Tuzla is the industrial heart, and it's working. It's actually very much reminded me on Linz, with a nice beautiful center and these beautiful industrial assets around. So Tuzla is the perfect partner region for Upper Austria in Bosnia. I come now to the 4 very dear to my heart countries: Montenegro, Kosovo and Macedonia. Actually, congratulations Macedonia for the major breakthrough these days, because it is really quite amazing what Macedonia has achieved, and it will be still a lot of bumps in the road from the Bulgarians, the Russians basically. The Russians are behind Radev, and all these Russian assets in Bulgaria have to be neutralized by significant American and European power, but even Macron has understood that he makes a fool out of himself if let's derail this process, and in the process for all Europe. So he has now intervened heavily. Congratulations, the Americans certainly have helped him, and we have progress on the Macedonian front. That is very good plus. So we come to Macedonia. Here the logical region of partnership for Upper Austria is Polog. Polog is Western Macedonia, which is the heartland of the Albanian minority, and it's with the cities of Tetovo and Kostivar, and there I have a lot of good friends. That's a very good region, very closely connected to Linz already, so that's very logical, and we have the region there. In Albania, the logical region of course is in the north, where we have so many, the cultural protectorate of 300 years, 400 years, and all these links to Shkodra. But I think that is maybe for Lower Austria to cover. We should focus on Elbasan, which is the logical partner of Linz, because there is such a big industrial center. Central Albania is also less developed, and it has huge issues, and it is very beautiful, but it is also an important strategic hub for the development of Albania, and it has many, many industrial assets from the communist times, like we have this first and chemie and all this. In the meantime, very well, beautifully rebuilt industrial assets from the wartime economy, and the same they have in Elbasan. And so that's the logic to do that. Good, that's Elbasan, very logic. That's Polog, very logic. and then we come to Montenegro, where there's not real regions. Everybody likes the coast. It would be also possible to think about others, but I have focused now on Nikšić region because it's a steel city. It is with the bauxite mine. It has a lot of industrial, and it's also the second city, like it's an important industrial center. Of course, not as big as Linz, which is, by the way, a very big 200,000 people, and it's a quite dynamic city. You see people have a Porsche here. The people get really rich because of the last 30 years of opening. When I was born in Linz, this was now more than 50 years ago, it was very poor city. It was really like you imagine Eastern European city. It was in the center of Europe at the eastern border, and it was by far not so developed or rich like it is today. Now it's a very modern city and renovated. It is also because of the huge impact of the new labor arriving and the new market opportunities of the European Union and the opening of the East, and this important geographic position which Linz has at the Danube. So it's Nikšić in my view. That's the logic of that, and that's what I think is actually very logical and very good. So Nikšić. Then comes of course Kosovo. There's a bit of competition here in our network. Some like the Tukacini Valley, hello my friend Mifta. Some like the eastern Kosovo, and I like it as well. I like everybody in Kosovo. I worked there many years, so I'm absolutely happy for all kind of city and regional partnerships, and any partnership is good. But I will focus the effort of the regional partnership on the north of Kosovo, on Mitrovica. It's the strategically most sensitive region. It has also this Trepča mine and the big lake, and so the logic is to work in that direction and to have the ninth region, the region of Mitrovica, including the north, including Mitrovica itself, including the whole network, and that's a very logical thing. I will promote that. So I repeat: Mitrovica, Nikšić, Elbasan and Tetovo, that is Polog with Kostrova together, the four. Tuzla and the Sanjak. Sanjak, it's Sjenica, and it is Novi Pazar, and it's also two other regions which I have currently not by heart, but okay. That's the south of Serbia. Then we have Kherson, then we have Imereti, and then we have a beautiful Kahul at the Danube. And this 9 region, that's my vision, mission and plan to now build this partnership, and also in the process open the Upper Austrian and Austrian labor market fully for the whole 9 countries now, and then also to prepare the Upper Austrian and the Austrian population for the EU membership of all these 9 countries, because that should happen until 2029. And that must be prepared and explained, because otherwise we have a big crisis and with the people, because they probably don't understand, because of our lazy politicians not being able to explain it, because they don't know that. If I make a test, if any of the people who are in charge in Austria would name any of the 9 regions on a map, I'm sure I will find not a single one who knows any of the cities, which I have recently. You can test yourself if you find them on Google Map. Type it in, it helps. But these are important regions. They are the industrial heartlands of their nations, or other major strategic, logistical or military significant regions, similar like Upper Austria always was at the strategic corner between the Czech Republic, Germany, the Alps and the Danube. And that is, I think, very important that we help specifically. And as we know, I'm for federalism. Federalism needs to be exported to Eastern Europe to break down and end the centralistic socialist traditions which are still in the minds of the policymaker and which are keeping these countries back. And also we have to explain and we have to communicate it to our own population and to the population of the countries which are coming towards Europe, that we need to share power, we need to have regional responsibility, and we need also unity in Europe, because it's not federalism to do everybody what they want, but it's federalism to be united together in the European Union. And that's the logic of this beautiful activity and the whole activity to prepare EU enlargement and to make Europe more united in the face of Russian war and aggression. And the way to win this war is ultimately also only by bigger unity, because we cannot militarily probably engage Russia. That we have to leave to Ukraine, unfortunately, because of the weak-willed American lack of resolve, and anyhow most Europeans wouldn't be for it. So we have to win it fiscally, institutionally, and we have to contain Russia simply by excluding it fully from our markets forever, and also by institutionally bringing all the countries in between fully to our markets and to our institutions, not on a different institutional basis, but on a full institutional basis. That's really very important, and that we did since the fall of the Cold War very successfully, especially as well with this beautiful country of Austria, which is since 1995 in the European Union and no day longer, because the Soviet Union didn't allow us to join before 1995. They fell end of 91, so we couldn't care less anymore and we ran into safety. We couldn't convince for NATO membership at that time because of the Soviet-Russian links in the Social Democratic Party back then, still being very strong, and of course anti-Americanism, xenophobia and all these terrible things which are running high in the Austrian political system of all parties, and they were not ready to let us fully join the West, but at least we joined the European Union 95. And that was very good, and the similar logic better in now when we have to take less consideration for the terrible tyrant of Europe. We need to go all in fully, and we need to fully make sure that all these beautiful countries are in the European Union and in NATO and with the Euro as fast as possible. And we have now the decade of enlargement ahead of us, and this must be prepared on the regional level, and therefore city and regional partnerships are very important to bring this logic to the people here. A lot of people, when you explain it correctly and remind them they were themselves refugees, like the Frönius and the Rübigs and so many of them, they were themselves refugees in 45, and as my family as well, by the way. And so many of us here in this beautiful Upper Austria got a difficult but still a welcome and the opportunity to settle anew in this free land backed by General Patton's Third Army, and then the security guarantee which America gave for the people west of the Enns and south of the Danube, while they sacrificed for 10 years the other part of Austria to terrible conditions. They had to submit for very long, but they were ultimately then freed as well whenever we had to submit to neutrality during 55 agreement to get the Soviets out. We got them off, and now Austria is free to some extent, but still Russia had a big say in our foreign and internal policy for all these years, and that is of course a terrible price to pay. But now it's time to make a closure and to fully join this beautiful alliance of NATO, and that's what I'm here to campaign for, and that's what I will ask here, and that is my claim, that it's now time to join NATO. Before I completely break down, I will show you the main square. I will close also with a call for unity and also a European consensus for NATO membership, for the labor market opening, for the cutting of Russian gas, and for some kind of, feeling of decency and pride that we can live without the tyrant's blackmail. We can do that because we are free people. We are united with the Americans and the Free West, and we will be able to trade with them freely after we have concluded TTIP and Mercosur. And instead of dirty Russian gas, we will then trade with our free brothers from the Atlantic. And that's something really good. I know the nationalists and the socialists and the national socialists of all three parties, which are nationalist, socialist and national socialist. They hate me for saying that. I can live with hate because I meet it every day on Twitter and on YouTube from their brothers in Serbia and Russia, which are insulting me every single day because of their ideological closeness to ancient regimes. They simply use similar tactics, and I can care a little less because I'm steeled in 40 years of political debate. If you think you can insult me, I will block you or I will simply ignore you. So, good. We are in this beautiful city, which has a very complicated history due to that specific fact that a very evil person has been here at school and has left this city and had it in memory, and he wanted to create some kind of cultural metropolis out of it. That was a bit of a complete mess, but he left us something much worse than his architectural typical, all these dictators, they love these big streets because of the tanks. So it's not a coincidence that we have this long straight street here, like most Eastern European capitals, because the ideological closeness of the so-called tank parties, like all this authoritarian, they love the tank parades because the tanks project their power over the people and their neighbors and best the whole of Europe. We have not submitted ultimately, thanks to American 1,000 billion US dollars which were given to the Soviet Union to win that war, and we have also been liberated by the Americans directly. And of course, a lot of people died on all fronts, which I'm fully aware of, and I honor all the victims and all the victims of the Soviet Union and of the Nazi Empire. But let's never forget, without the industrial, fiscal and economic might and the political decision making of the United States ready to deploy these vast resources, that would have never been possible. So I call always for NATO membership, and I call for NATO membership now. So this is Linz, the eye is falling, that's the art. And so we are at this beautiful old town. I say like Tuzla, but Tuzla was also very nice, maybe nicer. Anyhow, the partnerships will come. I will make my best to implement them. Any help is needed, and I would be most happy to receive it. Now from Linz, from the heat, now my very best, and thanks a lot for listening, and more to come from Pax Europiana here on the Upper Austria Goes Europe Day here on Tuesday. Thanks a lot from Linz. Best regards. Bye.